You're listening to Lofty Community Radio. We've got news for you in the studio today. We're joined by Mark Stewart, lead singer and lead guitarist for the band Gutter, who in 1981 dislodged Adam and the Ants as the number one hit in the Zimbabwe hit parade. As seen in the Courier on the 29th of July 2020, Gutter boasts one of the world's longest gaps between studio albums. In 1984 for their debut album, Cabbages and Kings, and now 36 years later, Gutter has released a new compilation album called Shoes and Ships and Sealing Wax. Joining me in the studio today to talk about this album and other things, globalization of music, is Mark Stewart. Welcome to the Lofty Studios. So how did you get into music in the first place, and what inspired you?
And ended up in Rhodesia as it was then. And my dad was quite musical, my mum as well, and I took classical piano lessons for a while. My dad actually ran the Coventry School of Music Corps of Drums, which was quite well known in at that time, sort of a marching band type thing. Anyway, I sort of learnt recorder when I was 5, and then classical piano, and then eventually started. A friend of mine left me an acoustic guitar when he went off back to England in Zambia. And I came back from boarding school and found this acoustic guitar, and I thought, oh, great. So I started teaching myself some chords, from a magazine. And then when I was 15, some friends were looking for a singer. And actually I went along to play guitar, but ended up being the singer in this band. And then we started playing. There was, I think, 4 of us. The drummer who's with me today joined us. He saw an advert on the notice board at school. We were looking for a drummer, and he grabbed his brother's drums and sort of taught himself to play quickly. And we're still playing together to this day. In fact, we're the ones that write most of the stuff as well. And a couple of other friends, Rodney Holborn, Graham Fox, on guitar and piano. And we started just rehearsing at one of the guys' houses. And started playing, people's parties and things like that. And sort of, I guess, just discovering what it was that we could do. And we didn't have a bass guitarist, so when I went on holiday with my dad, he bought me a bass guitar. My dad was very supportive, very supportive. Like, I came home the one night and in the atrium between my bedroom and the rest of the house was this PA sitting there.
Wow.
And he'd gone out and gone to an auction, I think, and bought this second-hand PA. Because we were just singing through an amp,
Yeah, because normally dads would say get a haircut and a real job. Yeah,
no, he was incredibly supportive and used to drive us to venues in his car and all that sort of thing. So that was great. And anyway, so we sort of started. We played more and more and more and got better and better, I suppose. And I went off to university in '77 in South Africa. And we started doing some demo recordings of some of our stuff, and actually got offered a recording contract at that time, and then it went on from there.
Well, so the late 1970s in South Africa, you're a university student. I believe you went through quite a few universities.
I went to Rhodes and did journalism and law, and my dad died, unfortunately, when I was 18. And he was only 45, and so there wasn't a lot of money around, and so I thought I'd better do a degree. My first degree should be something that I could possibly use, to generate money, because I was the eldest in the family. And so I did a journalism degree because I thought it would come in handy. And but then I managed to somehow put the money together, grants and what have you, to go and do law at UCT. So I ended up doing Bachelor of Journalism in NLLB.
That's the University of Cape Town?
Cape Town, sorry. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so all this time you've got the band going?
Yeah, in various iterations. At Rhodes, it was Rodney Holborn still, the guitarist, and myself and Michael Rudolph, who was one of the original members. And we played around at Rhodes. We did quite a bit of acoustic stuff as well. We were getting a lot more into the sort of folk and harmony type stuff at that time as well. So enjoyed that. And then went off to UCT And that's where the drummer was, and also Paul Howard, who's one of the guys with us now. And we started playing clubs and what have you there. And then we ended up pursuing that recording deal. And we released our first single in 1981, and that was Take Me Back.
Fantastic. So we'll hear that in a minute. But before we get to that, why did you call it Gutter? Why Gutter?
It's always been a bit of a thing because obviously punk came along at the end of the 70s, and we sounded like we should probably be a punk band, and we were anything but. It was really just, you sit around bandying names about trying to come up with something, and we just thought Gutter was something that people would remember, and that was really the only reason. Just simple as that.
Well, let's hear Take Me Back from your first album, Cabbages and Kings. Mark Stewart from Gutter joining us in the Lofty Community Studios. And we just heard Take Me Back from their first album, Cabbages and Kings. And the new album, Shoes, Ships and Sealing Wax, has just been released. How did you manage to overcome the tyranny of distance to record this new album? Here you are in Oakbank. I've just heard that you married a Adelaide Hills girl, and you've been here since 2012. Where's the rest of the band, and what happened?
Paul Howard and Tony Huggett, Tony Huggett's the drummer, are both in Cape Town. And my brother actually played quite a bit of the piano work on here, so he's in London. We've got Michelle Hill on vocals on The Maze, and she's based in Johannesburg. So spread around quite a bit. And Rodney Holborn, who I mentioned earlier, he's still contributed. In fact, on Normal Song, he played some of the lead guitar on that track, and he's based in Perth. So, yes, it's quite a spread. Mainly, it's Paul Howard is an IT guy, and he's very clued up on this sort of thing. And he said to us some years back, listen, there's the softwares around these days. We can actually work with it, and we can send large files around the place now using Dropbox and things like that, which you couldn't do previously. And he felt that we could actually produce, music that was of release quality, and I was very sceptical. But we agreed eventually to have a go, and because I didn't want to just produce demos, there was no point. And so we each have software, in this case Cubase, but there's lots of different types. And you load it up onto your computer. You have a sort of digital audio interface that you attach to it. And then I can plug a microphone in, or I can plug my guitars in, or bass, or I've got a MIDI connection up to my piano, so I can put in keyboard stuff as well. And it's been interesting actually the way it affects the way you record, because we end up often doing sort of, I guess, semi-demos of some of these songs, and we try different ideas out, and we have obviously got plenty of time, and we're not sitting in a studio paying recording time. So we can try different ideas, put them down. You've got unlimited tracks, so you can try different things out, double up on harmonies, triple up on harmonies if you want, that kind of thing. Try different ideas, and then eventually we sort of say, okay, we like the way this is working, we like these things that we've done, and we'll do a final version of it, if you like. Hopefully that sounds as good as the demo version did. So it can be quite a long process, but basically I put stuff down here and I send it over to them, and they then add it to the mix, add some reverb, some effects, or whatever else is needed, and then send me an MP3 back, and then I listen to it and say, yeah, I quite like that, and so we go. It is a long process, but it's all we can do over such a long distance, but at least we can do it.
So reflecting, with the ability to be able to reflect between the two albums and the different processes, would you say there's sort of, even though globalization has been radically challenged with COVID-19, it's given us an opportunity to explore these types of connections that you truly are a global band, even with your Southern African origins, that you can actually do a lot more. And because I'm wondering, normally with bands you get those sort of personality clashes and the conflicts that happen. You're fighting over which beer to drink or whatever it is. And but you don't need to worry about that now. You can just really focus on the music.
Yeah. Look, I mean, we've known each other a very long time. We're virtually family. I mean, it's as close to family as you get, basically. And of course, we have that connection with our language and the way we see the world. I guess we have a certain sense of humour and so we don't really have any. I mean, it was. We were a bit rusty, obviously, after 36 years, but we soon slotted back into it, and I suppose we always had a particular taste in music and the kind of things we liked that got us together in the first place, and that continues on now. So so we work very well together, and I talk to them on Skype almost daily, so we're well connected.
And so what was it like? I mean, I'm particularly interested, as my dear lofty listeners will know, particularly interested in what's going on in Zimbabwe and Southern Africa. What was it like being a musician in Southern Africa in the 1980s?
Well, it was interesting. And we actually came across an article recently written by a guy who's now a professor, I think, at the University of Zimbabwe. He was at the Bulawayo Chronicle at the time. And the heading of the article was "Where have all the white musicians gone?" And it was fascinating because in the early 80s, of course, it was still the euphoria of the change and Mugabe coming in and new independence and that excitement that went with it, and of course Bob Marley came out and they had all those parties, and there was a real feeling of excitement and new beginnings, if you like. And I remember having interviews with people there, black DJs and so on, about the album and so on, and they tried to make it very political, and they were saying, you white musicians, you can access good recording studios in South Africa. There was still a lot of that kind of stuff going on, and so I was fascinated to see that article saying, where have all the white musicians gone? Bulawayo, I don't know if Harare was the same. I think it was, but my experience of Bulawayo, there was a lot of music going on. There were a lot of bands. It was very vibrant, and I guess that's all unfortunately died a death. But it was great fun. I mean, it was an easy place to live in those days, and easy to get around, and we had a lot of opportunity. A small pond, I guess, but you were able to stand up, I guess, in that environment quite easily.
Because Bulawayo is like the second capital, not as big as Harare, which is again about the size of Adelaide, if not smaller, and certainly, I guess since independence in 1980, when there's like you said, Bob Marley came out to celebrate the independence celebrations, and the music scenes were really quite vibrant, I think. I mean, I was there in the late 1990s, and there were quite a few white musicians as well as mixed bands, and a lot of music going on, a lot of cabbage drinking. I don't remember much, but I remember dancing a lot, and it was really, really good fun. But I think it's that sense of now, independence is won. We can move on, and what's happened since then with Mugabe up until his death, and now beyond that, the country's gone from a breadbasket to a basket case.
It's enormously sad.
So obviously you've left Southern Africa, and you've spread your wings, and now you're working as a lawyer.
Yes.
So your university education did come in handy after all.
After all, yes.
Yes.
I would have dearly loved to have been a professional musician, and I was actually for a while. After I finished my degree, I went up to Joburg and set up a studio and worked as a recording engineer and recording some of our own stuff, some of which we're now starting to work on. And the idea was that I would get other bands to come in and record them in a demo way kind of thing. But we had an 8-track set up there, and it was quite good. And then I went and worked with the guy with the people that recorded us. They got me to come and work in there for a while as an engineer as well, and I loved that. But eventually I thought, I think I'd better go and finish off doing what I was going to do, and so I ended up going back and doing articles and becoming a solicitor, in South Africa, and also requalifying here.
And so what brought you to Australia then? It's a long way across the oceans?
I joined a company called Anglo American, which was a big mining house, and worked throughout Africa with them, which was a fantastic time because Mandela had just been released, and suddenly we were able to go into all these countries that I'd heard of but never been able to visit. Places like Ethiopia and Kenya and Burundi and Uganda and all those kinds of places. And so I was working as a sort of an in-house legal commercial guy in the mining game. And then they transferred me actually to Singapore. And so Penny, my wife, I came back to Adelaide, proposed, and then she came with me to Singapore. That's where we sort of spent our first few years living in Singapore. And then they transferred me down to Perth. So in 2000, we ended up in Perth. So it was really the company that was determining it. But I mean, Penny was unfortunately she died at the end of May. So,
sorry to hear that.
She was a horsewoman, and so she was desperate to get back to riding her horses here again. So I always thought we would end up back in Australia, and it's been marvellous. I've loved being here. I wouldn't have liked to have gone back to Joburg, for example. Having been away, you sort of realise what you were putting up with in that situation, and you just wouldn't want to go back into it. So.
Well, Mark, I think all of us in the Adelaide Hills are really glad to have you on board as part of the Hills Society and Hills community, and better than the Flatlanders, for sure. Much better horse country up here, and great for recording music globally through the networks. It's been fantastic having you on Lofty Community Radio. Which song would you like us to play from your latest album?
Not sure which ones you've played so
Shoes
far.
and Ships and Sealing Wax. We have heard a normal song, and I think that was Maybe There's a Way. I think we heard that too.
Well, how about Mary Jane?
Let's hear Mary Jane. So Mary Jane from Gutter, their latest release, and you can buy their album from, just Google the, it's originalgutter.com. Go to their website and check them out. Support local and global musicians all in one hit. It's thanks for coming on the show again, and hopefully we'll hear from you with your third album soon.
Thank you very much.